Hello, my beautiful friends. I am so sorry it has been such a hot minute since I've been here. But as you know, we went to Vegas. Super fun. Had a great time. Was remarried by Elvis. Went ziplining. Went to the Grand Canyon. Went hiking. It was really, truly spectacular. And then this past week, I've just had a lot of catch up for work. And I didn't want to just, throw out any video. I wanted to be purposeful. So today is Mother's Day. And I'm excited to talk about Mother's Day. Now, unfortunately, my mother passed many years ago now. I miss her every day. She had a hard life growing up, and but she was the person who taught me to always march forward. It's okay to have your rear view mirror and let it inform, but your best efforts are on things you can change and not on things you can't change. And I'm so grateful to her. And I was thinking, Dave asked me what I wanted to do for Mother's Day, and I said, I would like to do nothing. I would absolutely like to have a day where I don't have to go anywhere, do anything. I just want to sit at home. We had talked about going kayaking at our favorite spot, which is about 2 hours away. We talked about going to our favorite diner, which is 2 hours a different way. And I'm like, you know what? I want to do nothing. I want to do nothing. I want a day where I don't have to go or do anything. So that is what we're doing today. And French toast. That was my other request. I went for my kid to clean up the where he sits on the couch because it's a hot mess and he needs to clean it up. So, but as I was thinking, and as I get ready to go into reflection now, I was thinking about all of the women in my ancestry. And so I know that, every tradition has a different way that they honor their ancestors, and whether it's the maternal line or the paternal line. But, it is Mother's Day, so we're going to think about the mothers. So my mother's name was Karen. I called her Ruthie, which was a nickname I had given her because sometimes she would be ornery, like my great aunt Ruth, who was my dad's aunt, who was like 102. And so I would call her Ruthie when she was being a pain in the rumpus. But her name was Karen. And like I said, she had a hard life. My brother drowned when he was 8. Which was before I was born. But, as a mother myself, like I can't even imagine, I can't imagine what her life was like. He had drowned in a public swimming pool. He had hit his head, was knocked unconscious. The kids that were playing with him did tell the lifeguard, but the lifeguard didn't believe them, and he drowned. So I can't imagine the heartache that my mother had and the life that she led. I knew her when she was older. She had me when she was a little bit older, when she was married to my father and not her first husband. And, it's a sad story. Her mother, Connie, Constance Gertrude, came to the United States through Ellis Island from England with her mother, Kate Batchelor. And Kate had been married to my great-grandfather, the person responsible for all of the curly hair in our family. And he had been married before, but his first wife had died. So he had altogether 14 children, 4 of them with my great-grandmother, but he was 20 years older than her, and when he died, there was no money. So, how stories go through families of, why they left England, but when I pieced it all together through DNA and through history and through the records, it seemed most likely that the reason they came was because poorhouses were a thing at the time, and if she had not come to America, sponsored by her stepson Percy, she and my aunts and uncles would have been, and my grandmother would have been put in a poorhouse because there was no money there. So, I can go back that far. And then the story that we had been told was that her mother, had opposed her leaving the country and had fought. And so so my great-grandmother Kate had to trade her tickets for first class for third class so that her mother couldn't find her. But when I Scooby-Dooed all that, her mother had been dead for quite a few years. So she really had nobody in England to help her at all. Her parents were both passed. And so my great-great-great, right, they were all passed. So that it seems much more likely that had she not come, to the States, sponsored by her son Percy, she would have ended up in a poorhouse. So, you know, as we look back in our ancestral lines, right, I can trace both I can really just trace for my mother's side. My father's side, my cousin did an amazing job with the family history, made a book. My cousin's husband did a phenomenal job. So that's all well documented, and so, you know, and then other family members, like, you know, I kind of have a good sense, but I've always have felt very connected to the maternal line, and so that's, you know, the kind of the line that I go with. And you know, as I think I've talked about on the channel before, when I meditate, I often meditate in a Celtic way of going into what we would call the other world. So I have a whole, you know, way that I get into the other world, and I mean, I'm making it sound so much more mystical than it is, but really it's just, you know, it's meditation, standard meditation, and then I always envision this pathway that I walk to go down a ladder that takes me onto a beach, and then all my ancestors are there, but in sort of in the central position is a campfire with a figure that I call grandfather, and I sit with him, and I always talk about things with him. I was, you know, just talking about some people that I think are bullies to me. You know, as you get older, like, it's easier in school. Bullies are bullies, and you can tell them, but when they're in, like, the workplace, or if they're in a hobby that you're in, you know, it's a little bit harder to tell that they're being bullies, but you still feel that same bully energy, and there's nothing you can really do about it, because then you just sound ridiculous. So there's nobody that you can talk to advocate for you, because, you know, people let that happen. So, you know, those people continue to treat people badly. But anyway, so I talk to him regularly, but then up in sort of the back end of this beach thing, there's a rock face, and on top of that sits somebody that I call grandmother, and grandmother kind of watches over everything, and they're not related to each other, they're not married to each other or anything. My sense is that she's older than him, and she's always just kind of spanning the horizon and looking out over everybody. So, you know, so that's grandmother. And so if I have a really, like, deep issue, you know, not sort of like the everyday life kind of stuff, but like a deep philosophical issue, then I'll go up and talk to her. And so every once in a while she'll come down if the issue I'm talking to with grandfather is something that she wants to weigh in on. And then I try to listen to their advice and think about it and journal it out. So I know if you're not into stuff like this, that, you know, seems very squirrely, but that is what I do. So when I think about our ancestors, you know, I come on my mother's side from very working class beginnings, but when I looked back through the records, you know, like way back, there were some lawyers, and, you know, way back, or barristers is what they were called. But, you know, when I look back, there was some wealth, and then, you know, probably, like, you know, the kid that always gets in trouble, like that. I feel like we came off that branch, and that's okay, right? Because all of that DNA, all of the DNA of all the different clans and all the different people, you know, are here. And one of the greatest meditations that I don't know if this was on a retreat, or it was like you stand and then you visualize behind you, like your mother, and then your grandmother, and the people that, you know, like what we call our living or have lived ancestors. And then you think back behind that of all the people behind them. And even though you really can't place faces with them, you can feel their support. And, you know, on this Mother's Day, like, think about your ancestral lines. And if you didn't have a good relationship with your mother or your family, you know, think back in the line and see if there's somebody you can connect with back there. And if you're interested in the whole meditation for how to access your other world ancestors, you know, hit me up in the comments below, and I'll write it out or do video about it. It's pretty simple, but you do have to get in the space. And it's easy to fall asleep. That happens pretty often. So keep your journal by your bed. And I will say that the advice has always been really good. Like, you know, like, and you can call it your higher self. You know, that's what my brother's like. That's just your higher self, your inner brain talking. That sure, sure. But it has kept my mouth shut when it's needed to say, because, you know, I'm a fiery person, so I want to go after, for example, the people who I feel are bullying me. I want to say something, like I want to say, like, you are just being inappropriate, and I'm totally on to your tactics here. But, you know, grandfather will say, let it go. Let them go. Don't give them any more wood for that fire, and just keep doing your work and doing the things that you're good at, and they'll cook themselves in their own in their own reputations, because, you know, they're doing this to you, but they're going to get bored and they're going to move on. So, you know, just don't react is what grandfather always says. Don't react, let it go. And that's really helped. I mean, it really does help. And maybe that is my higher self telling me that, but you know, if it, sometimes, you know, there have been issues with family that, you know, grandmother has come down for, and has really helped me think through the issues, because, you know, I like to think about things from all different angles, and sometimes I can't see all the different angles, and grandmother, they help me to do that. So, you know, as we think about mothers today, and in mothers, I include fathers that have to serve in that motherhood capacity. Same on Father's Day, mothers that have to serve in the father capacity. You know, like reverence for mothers and grandmothers, and the women in our lives who've really just had a great impact on me. My mom was so smart, but she had to leave school in high school so that she could get married to her first husband and have my oldest brother, Mike. And she had so much potential, but it was just a different time, and she couldn't stay in school back then in the community she lived. That wasn't allowed. And so, you know, I often think if she had better opportunities, if she had different opportunities, you know, she'd have been a lawyer. She was so smart. She was such a inductive thinker. She really, really could think through an issue. She was a phenomenal writer. She was an amazing cook. People would drive from all over to eat her cooking because she was that good. You know, not classically trained. She did some cooking classes, I think, when I was a teenager, but, you know, no degree or anything, but her cooking, she was an amazing cook. And, you know, and she really loved, even though she had no money, she always loved helping other people who had no money. And so she would always be dreaming up a plan to help, you know, senior citizens living in a home, you know, collecting stuff so that they would have a gift basket. Or, you know, like, we didn't have any money, but she would have these huge holiday dinners, and she would have two seatings, one for family and then one for the steel workers that worked with my dad. Like, she was just a very generous person, like not just with money, because we didn't have any, but generous with her time and generous with her talent. And then she would save up all year to do this, and I know that that's where I get my community mindedness. I get it from her, and I also get that sort of march forward perspective from her. Like, there's no the past can inform you, but you can't live back there. You have to keep moving. And you know, I'm very grateful. So I miss my mother on Mother's Day. My own boys don't think Mother's Day is a big deal, so I only ever ask them for a handmade card. I don't want them buying cards. I'd rather have them write a play or create a skit. I used to make them go hiking, but now that they're over 18, they think they don't have to. But that's my favorite thing to do. But in any case, I'm wishing all of you a very happy Mother's Day if you're a mother. And call your mom if you have one to call. And if you don't, and you're able to meditate and go back and talk to all the mothers in your ancestry line, it's definitely worth it. 100% recommend. I am wishing you all the very best in light and love. Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.